Good evening, everyone. My name is Milion Balai. I'm the General Coordinator of the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. I'm talking to you from Ethiopia. We have our Christmas today, Ethiopian Christmas. I say Merry Christmas to you all. So today, our food, people were fasting for the last 2 months. The fasting involved not eating food for half day and sometimes up to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So today there was a lot of meat eating. So I was going around and eating meat and drinking. So if anything happens with me, you know what what to blame. Thank you very much for coming. The Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, in collaboration with ORFS, is running this event. The Alliance will have 5 events over the coming 5 days. This is the first one for the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa. It's the largest or the biggest civil society movement in Africa. Out of the 55 African countries in Africa, we work in 50 of them, or our members work in 50 of them. It's a broad-based alliance. We have farmers networks, we have fisher folks, the pastoralists, indigenous peoples. We do also have faith-based institutions, youth networks, and women networks, consumer networks, civil society networks. So almost everybody is represented. We say conservatively that our members account up to 200 million Africans. Um, we work to promote agroecology, and we do research, we do public education, we do advocacy based on the research. We don't do advocacy out of feelings, but based on really, really thorough research. And also we do social mobilization. Our session today is about food. What kind of food system Africa needs? And I'm happy to say that I have four really, really able individuals with me. They are all activists in their own right. You know that, I think it's the case in every part of the globe that there are crises of food. There is a crisis related to food, the food that we eat, the environmental crisis, health crisis, nutrition crisis. There is a cultural crisis. There are a lot of crises that's happening in Africa, and also the policies that are formulated around our food uh, have a lot of problems. They are not democratic, meaning people have not participated in producing those policies. They are influenced by outside actors, and also, there are lots of innovations on ground, innovations by African farmers and fisher folks, and all involved in the food system. But that's not reflected in our food policies. So we want, AFSA is trying to develop an African food policy. We have started that work. We are developing that policy in collaboration with the African Union Commission and other actors. There will be a country level dialogue in 30 Africa countries, and what transpires in these dialogues will be reflected um, in the policy. And there will also be dialogues at a higher level with the African Union and other actors. So today we've come to talk to you, just in short, just give you a taste of the food system in Africa. I have Gertrude Proud Pizawari from Zimbabwe. Gertrude is a country coordinator for the Participatory Ecological Land Use Management, PELM Zimbabwe. For the past 15 years, she has been working with the civil society organizations to raise consciousness on agroecology, food systems, gender, information and communication technologies, and livelihoods. She's a social entrepreneur and award-winning journalist and feminist. We also have Amadou Kanute. He's the executive director of Secodev Africa. He's from Senegal. He will talk to us about West Africa. He heads the Pan African Institute for Consumer Citizenship and Development, which is based in Dakar, Senegal. The organization runs 5 priority programs and all seeking to build active citizenship equipped to demand adequate access to quality essential services of water, sanitation, food and nutrition, energy, telecommunication, and health. We also have a rising and a very active Tunisian activist also. Her name is Nadia Trigui. She's an independent researcher and graduate in international political economy from the University of Tunis. She works as a parliamentary observer at the Tunisian parliament, then as a journalist. She's interested in social movements and issues related to food sovereignty and justice, with focus on socio-economic and environmental rights. She now coordinates the program of community-supported agriculture citizens food network with the Tunisian Association for Permaculture. I think you would agree with me that we have a really, really able panelists with us. So the way we are going to do it is it will be conversational. We don't have any PowerPoint presentation or any kind of presentation. I will ask them questions. They will respond to those questions. And if other people have questions also, then I mean, either of the panelists would can ask either of the panelists other questions. So it's a debate formula. We don't have a PowerPoint. So I'm going to ask them, to respond to the first question. The first question would go to Gertrude. So, the first question: how does the food system look in your country, and hopefully in your sub-region? She comes from Zimbabwe, and she is working on so many issues in the region, sub-region in Southern Africa. So, Gertrude, how does the food system look in your country?
Great. Thank you so much, Million. I think to start the conversation, it's important to give a better understanding of what we mean when we talk about a food system. Because for me, that gives a holistic perspective for people to understand the food system in Zimbabwe and in Southern Africa as a whole. So for me, when I look at the food system, I'm looking at the growing, the harvesting, the processing, the packaging, transporting, marketing, consumption, distribution, and disposal of food. So when we understand that entire chain, it then helps people to appreciate how the food system in a region is working. So looking at Zimbabwe, the story of origin is that our food system is largely dominated by industrial practices. And we see that dominating in the entire system, with the policies supporting how the food systems work in a country, with also so it's about the policies that support that entire system. It's also about the infrastructure that have been put in place to support that food system. And also you find that the conversation within policymakers, the people who produce food, is also dominated by the industrial thinking, which is use of chemical fertilizers, use of hybrid seed, high mechanization, consumption of food that has really little nutritional value. So if I'm to give that broad perspective or summary in terms of the food system in Zimbabwe, I would say it's largely industrial dominated, but there is also the emergence of a new of practice, that's agroecology, and there's that recognition that agroecology is the way to farm in a better way that's in harmony with nature. So I would actually say in Southern Africa, because of our colonial background and the farming system that was imposed on on Southern Africa, it brought with it the industrial practices, the use of chemicals, the use of seed, the use of fertilizers and herbicides to reinvent the way how people used to farm. And I would say people used to farm with this has replaced a system that undermined the farming practices that were being used in Southern Africa to produce nutritious, sufficient, and healthy food for the population. Over to you, Mitch.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. Thank you. Now I give it to Amadou. You have 5 minutes. Amadou, you are muted. You are muted, Amadou.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Million. Good evening, everybody. The food system in West Africa is very extrovert. Very extrovert in terms of we depend so much on imported food. And what are those products that we are talking about? We are talking about rice. West Africa consumes 24 million tons of rice, and out of that 24 million tons of rice, about 60% are imported. We are talking of wheat, we are talking of pasta, we are talking of milk, all of which are products that can be produced locally, and which products are also suffering from a very fierce competition from products that are imported from Europe, from America, from Asia, in which cases they are either very subsidized in those countries or they get a lot of support in one way or another, which make them very competitive compared to the food that are produced by our local farmers. That is one specific characteristic. The second is that the models of production are models of production that are oriented towards exporting. We produce, but because of the structural adjustment policies put in place in the 80s, most of the food that are produced with an orientation for export. And finally, third characteristic of our food system, consumption models. Consumption models are very much mimicking, trying to imitate consumption models that you have in other cultures, Europe, America, and so on. These are three characteristics which literally saps all the capacities of production that we have, which weakens producers, and I'm very happy while we are seeing that trend to also note that more and more farmers are standing up, more and more governments are standing up and saying, we cannot let this go. In our case, for instance, in Senegal, because of the COVID-19, our government have now decided that for the next development plan, food sovereignty will be the priority in the development plan. Another decision that they have taken is to say, out of all the money that we are putting into buying fertilizers, 10% of that money will go now into buying natural fertilizers. So while we are very concerned about our extrovert models of production, extrovert models of consumption, consumers not being aware of the impact of their choice as consumers buying food that are imported, what impact would that have on levels of poverty? What impact it would have on the soil, the way we are producing? At the same time, farmers, small farmers are organizing themselves and saying, this got to go, this is not sustainable, we cannot continue, just for the case of Senegal, to import every year
Yeah,
800 million US dollars per year for our food. It's not
thank you.
sustainable.
Excellent, Amadou. By the way, the participants to this panel, Amadou is on the way from his office to his home. There's a curfew because of COVID, so he's trying to escape the curfew. Thank
Yeah.
you, Amadou, for paying the sacrifice to be with us. Thanks
Most
a lot.
welcome. My pleasure.
Yes, that's an excellent explanation. Now I go to North Africa, to Nadia. Nadia, your case then. What does the food system look like in Tunisia and hopefully in your region?
Um, Thank you, Melin. Thank you for everyone for the interesting information. Overall, the food system in Tunisia and in North Africa in general is a very vulnerable food system. We are in Tunisia, for example, facing more and more vulnerability in relation to climate change. And our soil is degrading in some region up to 70%, and we are losing 20,000 hectares every year of arable land. Our agriculture in North Africa are structurally based on small farmers. But despite this, we see that the most food policies and most government policies encourage a big investment and capital intensive and industrialized agriculture instead of small agriculture. Another thing is they encourage more export-driven crops or types of cultures, which they use as a leverage to lift up the economic crisis, for instance, in Tunisia, that the country is going through since 2010, 10 years from the revolution now. Uh, our food system also is vulnerable. Our farmers specifically are vulnerable because they are at the end of the value chain, and they are impacted by the high cost of imported inputs, for instance, seeds, hybrid seeds, and chemicals. There is a very high use of chemicals that is impacting both their health and the productivity of their land, and and the lack of their access to land property titles and finances puts them in a cycle of dependence. Um, this is the picture on the nation scale. It is more accelerated in Morocco, for example, in the region of Agadir, where foreign capital has access to land, and Spanish investments are hyper intensifying production there. Um, North Africa is specifically also known for its dependence, especially on wheat, imports of wheat on the consumption side. And this doesn't make the country and the people in a situation of food security. And the fact that also governments are not willing to change their vision and support small farmers makes the situation even worse. we also, as I started with climate change, we on the regional level, we are suffering altogether from the scarcity of water that is directed to agricultural production, and this adds more vulnerability to the situation.
Excellent. Thank you so much, all. Let me go back to Gertrude, because I know you've explained, I think you've laid a base for this discussion on food systems really, really well. Uh, I want you also to talk about culture in 1 or 2 minutes. I think the food system also sits in the culture of the people, you know. The gender aspect to it, there is an ecology aspect to it, in addition to what you've said. So, how does the culture of your part of the region look like in terms of the food system that we have? And what's the relationship? Just in 1 or 2 minutes.
So I'll speak about the traditional culture, not the modern culture where people have adopted new ways of growing food, relating to food. I will speak about the story of origin in Southern Africa in terms of culture. The culture in Southern Africa was actually derived from our ancestors really communing with the land and getting the law from the land. And because our ancestors spent time in nature, they knew how to relate with land. They also knew how to relate with the water bodies. They knew how to relate with the mountains, the stars, the sun, and the entire ecosystem through which we produce our food. So there has been the crisis that we are actually experiencing is actually coming as a result of the disconnection where the current society has disconnected from the laws of nature. And this disconnection is what's bringing this disorder and disharmony in our communities. And this disorder is the one that's intensifying the crisis and showing the fragility of our food systems in Africa. So in brief, I would say culture played a critical role in that it helped people to reconnect to nature, and it also enabled people to live with the laws of nature, to live with rhythm, the natural rhythm and cycles of Mother Earth. And from this understanding, they were given the law. And because they were given the law, they were able to commune with the entire system that helps us to produce food. They began to participate as subjects in a much complex system. And I think this is the critical role of culture in food
But,
system.
but Gertrude, I'm afraid with the new generation in Africa is not connecting to culture. It's connecting to the other culture, culture in the
Yes,
West,
because
much more than they are
you're
connected.
right. Because they have been told that what they are being connected to nature and to their culture is backward. They have been told repeatedly that what you are doing is inferior, whilst in fact that is what brought us to become humans, being able to participate as subjects in this complex life support system. And I feel that the recognition of indigenous cultures and tradition is part of the solution to reviving a healthy food system, a food system that is supported by laws of nature that allows people to live in harmony with Earth and her children, with the rivers, the soil, the trees, and the entire ecosystem. And I think this is what's missing when we really talk about the youth. They have been told again and again that their tradition is backward, And this is something that we need to relearn and re-educate the youngsters that their tradition, their way of life is critical in maintaining a healthy system.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. That was fantastic. Amadou, I'm coming to you.
Yes. Okay.
So, Gertrude has explained to us what the role of culture is in transition to a sustainable food system. We have to transition. And I know that you have worked with consumers and consumer issue, and you've been at one time the head of the global consumer movement. So, in that, what do you think is the role of consumers in transition to a better food system?
Precisely what Gertrude is raising is where we should come in as consumer organizations,
Mhm,
informing consumers on the impact of their choice.
mhm,
That is one critical area where consumer organizations in Africa have been
mhm,
engaged in. Another area would be awareness raising. How many people know about the nutritious values of the food that are being produced in our
mhm,
countries? We need to enlarge to ensure that as many people as possible know about those nutritious value, the health component in food. Three, influencing policies. Influencing
mhm,
policies is the role for consumer organizations, but also civil society organizations in general. I mean, if we have been able in Senegal to get food sovereignty high on the agenda of the government, it's because there have been organizations that have been working on that for more than a decade.
mhm,
If we have been able to get the government to now agree to put 10% of public resources, public fund into buying natural
mhm,
fertilizers, this has been achieved after years of advocacy,
mhm.
years of influencing policies.
Uh,
Local
Amadou,
consumption. Yes, go ahead.
Amadou, but we know that so many consumers do consume cheap food because it's cheap. And in most countries, the foods that are sold at a special place are expensive. There's the food that are, agroecological produced. So how do you mobilize farmers around this when the food is a little bit expensive?
Well, this is the difference between the consumer movement in Africa and the consumer movement in industrialized countries, where they make a clear distinction between consumers and producers. While in Africa, our work has been to talk more of what we would call prosumers, producers, consumers. How do we ensure that producers can get a fair price from what they are producing, while at the same time making the prices affordable, the price of goods that are produced in an agroecological manner, in a biological manner? How do we ensure that they are produced in a way that can make them still affordable to consumers,
Mm.
particularly disadvantaged consumers? Because we're
Okay,
not talking, okay,
okay,
please go ahead.
please conclude.
Okay, and that's where it is important when I talked about these, the fact that the state would now subsidize the price of natural fertilizers, because that will come to reduce the price of food to disadvantaged consumers. Otherwise, the food that
Mhm.
is produced in an agroecological manner will just be there for a segment of our consumers, those who have, those who are rich, the first tier of consumers, right? And this is not what we make agroecology a big movement in Africa. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Nadia, I'm coming. Mad Nada, I'm coming to you. Um, um, you are working with social movements. You know, you're an activist and you're working with social movements. Gertrude talked about the importance of culture for transition to a better food system. Amadou talked about the role of consumers. What about social movements? What's their role?
Well, we need first to talk about the emergence of social movements related to food.
Mhm.
We still are at the burgeoning stage of having really social movement, having food at the center of their claims. But at the moment, and since a few years, with the acceleration of the destruction um, production systems due to the explosion in input costs, and due to also the destruction of the quality of the soil, we see more and more protests from social movements, specifically on three topics. One, environment and pollution, all
Mhm.
that the industry is doing to pollute the soil and the air and prevent farmers from producing. Two,
Mhm.
from the scarcity of water
Mhm.
and the inaction of the state to provide farmers with waters to drink, but also to irrigate and be able to produce. And the
Mhm.
third reason is the market concerns when it comes to production costs, selling ceilings, unfair competition.
Mhm.
So basically, we can summarize these movements into protests against predatory extractive patterns from the industry, from
Mhm.
and two, a state inaction, and three, market value extraction from rurality, from the rural side to the cities, for the benefit of uh, capital that is located in the cities. Um, Especially what these movements can add, if they happen to consolidate their networks and put food at the center, is that they can drive a lot of consumers with them. Especially there is a culture of consumption that is new and that was more also catalyzed by the COVID-19, where a
Mhm.
lot of people have come to reconsider their relationship to food as not just something they throw in their mouth, but something that is related to their health. And they started to see also the hidden costs that is in the price of the food. So if we
Mhm.
talk now as generally, food has started to change in terms of perception in the eyes of consumers, and that can also has a future in rallying around food as a concept, as a multidimensional concept. The
Mhm.
producers, those living in the rural areas, and those living in the cities, and also labor movements. And this
Mhm.
is where we can arrive as social movements, as a connection in connecting these social movements to advance the cause of food sovereignty.
Thank you very much. That's really excellent. Three really excellent inputs. I will park a little bit here and go back to the participants. The participants have sent their most voted questions. The first question is to Amadou. Amadou, I'm so happy that now you are out of your car and in your home.
Yes, I'm home now.
I can notice that now. Okay. Uh, a question to Amadou. Does food sovereignty in Senegal means increased self-sufficiency? If so, how will you increase domestic agriculture production in practical terms? Which crops are the focus and to what timeline? Thank you.
Million, sorry. Can you come again with your question?
Yeah, yeah. Some of them is a bit problem. Anyway, let me give it to you and you decide.
Hmm.
Does food sovereignty in Senegal means increased self-sufficiency?
Hmm.
If so, how will you increase domestic agricultural production in practical terms? This is a productive. Which crops are the focus and to what timeline?
Okay.
That's the
Uh,
question.
okay. The government had decided that they would work for food sovereignty in our staple food, which is rice.
Mm-hmm.
That by the end of 2019, it was planned that
Mm-hmm.
we would reach food sufficiency in rice.
Mm-hmm.
That was not, we could not deliver on that. But
Mm-hmm.
then what has happened is that, and that's where policy coherence comes in. While
Mm-hmm.
we were pushing for that, at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, we were not putting all the resources that were needed to achieve that objective.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, with the COVID-19 that has just come, we have learned the hard way. We
Mm-hmm.
have learned the hard way, and the government has now decided to almost to multiply by almost three the budget that goes to agriculture. They have also decided to ensure that we are able to have food sovereignty high on the political agenda. It is now part of the plan, the development plan of Senegal, which is called the uh, Plan for an Emerging Senegal. Agroecology and food sovereignty are pillars number two in those plans. And it's
That's
incredible
okay.
that they were very open to civil society contribution. So we have come up with our platform of civil society organization, regional bodies, researchers, universities, academia, and we have produced a document that we have given to the government telling them this is our contribution to your plan for food sovereignty. So all of these facts, plus the fact that small scale producers are organizing themselves and they were at the forefront with civil society organization to push for agroecology, to ensure that they have control of land policy that was formulated,
Mm-hmm.
control of water. How do we ensure that they have access and control of the water for their production? All of these facts will contribute to the fact that we are moving or we are trying to get to that food sovereignty or food sufficiency in some critical areas like rice, all of these things that we import and which compete with the food produced locally, millet, sorghum, and so on, all these cereals that are produced and which are being pushed out of the way, pushing at the same time away our culture.
Okay, thank you so much. I think that you have somehow responded to the other questions also because there were questions like are exports of agroecological or organic products seen as one part of an agricultural development strategy together with regional production and food security? I think you've talked about that, about the strategies. Let me go to the final question to the three of you. Now I will start with Gertrude. I think you responded to it somehow, but I want you to put some perspectives to this one also, and add some more suggestions. We are, as we said in the beginning of this
Yes.
panelization, we said we are in a crisis. in a nutritional crisis, health crisis, environmental crisis, cultural crisis, human rights crisis. How do you think we can get out of this crisis? One or two or three maximum bullet points. How do you think we can get out of this crisis?
I strongly feel that there is need to have a reinvention of the entire system and thinking. Because as long as we talk about food sovereignty and we use the capitalistic thinking, which is mainly dominated by being extractive, exploitative, then we are not really making any difference. I think that it's important to come up with a system that is earth-centered. And because I spoke mostly about it, the cultural component and the thinking of indigenous people is that they do not come to manage life, but merely they are custodians of life. And we really need to find ways through which we can be in communion with the other beings in our ecosystem. So I feel it's important to come to understand food sovereignty perspective rather than a human-centered perspective. Because if we engage in this discussion and we are human-centered, then we are not really changing anything. We are simply replacing the old system with a new system, but with something different. So it's important to come in this connection with the with Earth giving us the laws to live in harmony with nature, to produce in harmony with nature, and to recognize the sacredness of all forms of life on Earth. That includes the life of soil, because it's living, the water.
Oh my God, she's gone. Hopefully, she'll come back again. By the way, to all of the participants, I think the panelists have kindly agreed to stay behind for more questions. So if you are not answering your questions right now because of time, we can still go on discussing with you through the link that's going to be attached. There are a number of questions directed at Amadou. So Amadou, can we see your face? Totally not your ear. Can you see your face
Okay.
very well? Yes. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll
All
go
right.
to
Yeah, yeah.
Nada first. I'll
Can you
go
see
to
me
Nada
now?
first. No, no, yeah, I see you now. Yeah, if you
Okay.
don't move around, that will be perfect. Nada. Um, so how do you think we can go out of this crisis?
Can you repeat,
We are we
Miriam?
are we are in a crisis. We are in health, nutritional, environmental, human rights, and cultural crisis because of the food system. There are other factors, but the food system, the current food system, is contributing heavily towards that. So, how do you think we can go out of this crisis? I think you mentioned some strategies, but I just wanted you to, I just giving you the chance to elaborate more. Yes.
Definitely, organizations like the one Amadou is in, consumer organization can do a lot by
Mhm.
partnering with farmers, because we cannot get out of this without partnership between producers and consumers. We are both in the same crisis, and if we are conscious, both of us, of what it takes in terms of effort to produce, and what then we can give the right, we can give the fair price to farmers, so they can sustain their land. Also, if farmers are aware, and consumers also are aware of all the stakes that come with that apple, on an impact on their health, then there will be uh, a drive for a change to agroecology and more sustainable food practices and food production techniques that can help us go over this system. Also, a common thing that we hear from farmers is that what they prevent them from migrating, Tunisian farmers, I think, what prevent them from migrating to a more using less chemicals in agriculture is the fact that consumers do not choose the small fruits or small
Yeah.
vegetables. They have been used to a certain I would not say standard, but size, and the lack of information they have about this hides the fact that this big apple comes with with a lot of harm on your health. So it's a really education and a strong partnership between consumers and farmers that can help us go over and look to the other sides, to agroecology.
Thank you so much. Amadou, you have a flood of questions for you. You said making healthy food cheap for the disadvantage is key, as you say. Do you have solution to this? How do you make food cheap to people, basically, especially to those who are disadvantaged? Can you make this available at a large scale? Um, so, do you have an example from Senegal, from an actual happening in Senegal? Amadou, we see only your head now, part of your
Okay.
head. So it's good to have your vision, your face. I think
Okay.
your mobile is moving.
Okay, Million. We
Yes,
have been
sorry.
working on. Sorry, can I go ahead?
Yeah, and there is also another question. What about fish? They say
Yes.
there are four factories hovering up Bonga Shads
Hmm.
and Sardinella. Will the
Hmm.
government address this under a food sovereignty plan?
Yeah.
There's, apparently this is from somebody who knows Senegal very well. So
Good.
yes,
Good. All right. The
you
first point: how do we
can
make
provide
food
it.
cheap
Want to see your
for the
face.
majority of the people, particularly food that come from agroecological methods of production? This is really something that is, I have to say, a difficult question, a Chinese puzzle for us. Because what has happened is that most of the production that was subsidized were mainly food that were for either export or large consumption.
Mm.
And now we are saying we need to ensure that we can have food that is produced in methods that are sustainable, but that can be accessible geographically and financially to consumers.
Mhm.
So while there are ways government can support that by subsidizing like they have done now or they have started to do, even if 10% is small as subsidies to natural fertilizers, this is a beginning. This is going to start this year. And we will continue advocating for more subsidies to be transferred from all those industrial production or production just for export or production from production of goods that are dependent on our people who support our economies, countries that support overseas development assistance. And it is all that fight that go together. While we are talking to our leaders here, we need also to challenge the economic model, the international trade, the way it is being formulated, to ensure that we are just not depending solely on those people to tell us if you go agroecology, we won't support your agriculture.
Mhm.
If you go agroecology, we won't support your other expenses that you have in your country. This is a fight that civil society organizations should be waging at international level to challenge the international rules in international trade. That is one. At national level, what we are doing is to work with producers, to work with uh, consumers to have what we call cooperatives. Cooperatives whereby we buy in bulk and then redistribute. Then the cost of a kilogram would go down when you buy. Can you imagine if a consumer buys just 1 kilogram per day to feed his family, compared to consumers that can buy 1 ton per month? Then people start listening to you when you advocate. That is the second way. Third way is institutional markets. We are advocating for government to say our army, our police, our school canteens should be fed with locally produced food. So these are some of the ways, while we are at the same time doing advocacy, awareness raising programs with citizens, with women, households, and so on, for them to understand the value of consuming indigenous food. That is for the first question. The second question about the fish.
Short answers, Amadou. Okay.
Sorry?
The time is flying. Short answers, please. Thank you very
Short
much.
answer, we are not happy about this trade deal between Senegal and Europe about the fish treaty. We are not happy about it simply because, one, it is happening at a time, the wrong time, when the youth are getting into onto the sea to get to Europe. That's when we have signed this treaty. Why? Who is going? It is mainly youth that were making their living out of fishing in the sea. And we are here coming up with this treaty whereby we are selling the resources from the sea to Europe, where our youth are trying to get. Something needs to change there, and we have said it. Fisher folks have said it. Civil society organizations have said it, and I believe the government has come to terms and realized that there is a mistake that has been made and which should be corrected.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think the last question, probably, I don't know whether you can answer that in 1 minute, is people understand that Senegal is taken as a fantastic example of agroecology becoming a national strategy, as you have explained it to us. But is that somehow percolating in the African countries? You know, is this happening also in other West African countries? I know that there is a research being done in 10 African countries to explore how agroecology can be integrated into the agricultural agenda. But can you say in 1 minute or less where this movement, the agroecology movement, is going in West Africa, especially with governments, not with civil society?
Milad, was the question for me?
Yes.
What was
Final
that?
question. Yeah.
What was
I
the
mean,
question?
agroecology as a strategy is being taken up in Senegal. Can you put
Yes.
your face, please?
Yes.
Yes. In Senegal, Senegal is going in agroecological direction. Is this reflected in other West African countries? That's basically the question.
Yes, yes.
And
Togo
quick
is
answer.
going that route. Togo is going that route in West
Okay.
Africa.
Yeah.
And I know that also in Mali, we have groups that are working hard to get the government to go on that. But the political situation in Mali is so unstable that you cannot really have civil uh, social activism, right?
Yeah.
But in Senegal and in Togo, Benin as well, right? These are three countries that I know in West Africa where agroecology is really gaining ground.
Okay, thank you so much. It's really a pity that Gertrude saying she's writing to me that the internet is unstable and she's going out. Um, um, and she said she can follow the conversation, but she cannot be part of the panel. I'm really sorry for that for the participants. It would have been really, really great to get her perspectives, to let her at least uh, her responses. Well, I think this was a fantastic discussion. We have identified some real problems with our food system in Africa. We talked about the impact of high input agriculture in Africa in the guise of modernizing African agriculture. What governments are promoting in their policy is industrial agriculture, basically. There's a competition between African farmers and others also. By the way, there is a link now, Zoom link now. I'm sure this same link is put for you. So we will all be available after this. We can go to the Zoom link after this discussion to continue our discussion. But in the 4 minutes that we have, maybe I can give you some summary. Um, Export orientation is a big problem in Africa. I think these are what I'm talking about is like a commonality in most of African countries. I can say that even for Eastern Africa, it is the same. So export oriented consumption. The most African following the consumption models of Europe and the North in general. Um, Imported and high cost of imported inputs is also very much discouraging African agriculture. Also, the dumping. In fact, there's a lot of dumping of products from the West. So that's also creating climate. Climate is a big impact on African agriculture. And as Gertrude has explained, and as I can tell you from my own experiences, also there is a very high erosion of culture in Africa. It's a very sad event. I'm not sure how, and in the coming 2 generations, we can maintain African culture. It is hugely eroding. It's a huge concern because in our culture, as Gertrude explained, in our culture is knowledge. In our women, in our mothers, is knowledge about the food system. Very important knowledge, and that's disappearing. So these are part of the problems. And Gertrude emphasized how it's important to connect with nature through our culture. It's very much important. And she's emphasized that that's the only way that we can really transform our food system. Sometimes, going forward is not good. It's always good to go back and see how your food system was and learn from it. And Amadou talked about the importance of informing consumers. I think this point is emphasized both by Nada and Amadou. Informing consumers is very much important. Awareness raising and linking producers and consumers. What Amadou called prosumers. That's the first time that I hear this word. It's a very interesting word. So there's a prosumer agenda is a very important agenda. I think there was a question about this agenda, the prosumer agenda. Taking food as a multi-dimensional perspective is also very much important. So, collaboration among consumers and producers and working with cooperatives, all these are a fantastic solution. So I really thank you. So I urge all of these panelists to click on the link. And people, if you have some more questions for us, I know, for example, one of the questions was directed at AFSA, and it was asking whether we need support from our European colleagues to really organize some boycotts. And we always say that a linkage with Europe, a linkage with the North is very, very critical for our movements in Africa. We want to link with you. We want to work with you so that our impact becomes much better. So thank you. Thank you all the participants for participating in our event. And thank you for the panelists for your excellent intervention. And thank you, Amadou, for being part of this panel in your car and in your home. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Please, all of you, the panelists, please click on the link. Thank you.